You know, I didn't really think this would be happening. But here it is! Hello everyone! Welcome to the debut episode of What Concepts. I know that was originally just the working title, but since I could not come up with anything better, you'll have to deal with what is an admittedly stale meme for a name. Anyway, Stone Sour, they've been around for a long time and were actually around before Corey Taylor's better-known band of Slipknot. They put a lot of work, even going through a brief breakup, mostly due to Corey's devotion to Slipknot. But they did reform in 2001, and in 2012 and 2013 they put a two-part concept album titled House of Golden Bones. The concept itself is based on a comic book by Corey Taylor, and it tells the story of a fictional character simply named the Human who wakes up in a strange, unusual place. Part 1 will focus on the first album, whereas Part 2 will focus on the second album, and I'll go more into the themes for Part 2 as well. For the first time ever, this is What Concepts, and today I'll be talking about the story of House of Golden Bones, Part 1. So we start off with the album's first song, titled Gone Sovereign. One thing that I didn't mention in the intro is the fact that the songs on House of Golden Bones Part 2 are reprisals of the songs on Part 1, containing similar riffs, refrains, and so on. So yeah, anyway, Gone Sovereign is often linked with this album's second track, titled Absolute Zero. In essence of the story, the second song details the human waking up in this ordinary world and basically saying that he's not a traditional hero, but he'll help whoever he can. But the first song in Gone Sovereign is a bit trickier, although it does seem to be a bit darker, with the human showcasing his more morally ambiguous side, whereas with Absolute Zero he seems more honest about it. Both tracks together are furiously paced as well, with Absolute Zero being the heavier and more memorable of the two, as well as expanding quickly on the main character, whose story is told really well right off the bat through Corey's voice. He does convey that feeling that, is this main character someone we can fully trust yet? And, what is his journey at this point? Because in terms of how the story is structured for the first album, it's a bit more all over the place, whereas for the second one it's a bit more explained, which is why I'll be going more into the themes on that one, but I do want to touch about it here as well, obviously. Otherwise I really wouldn't have as much fun as I'm having right now, to be honest. I'm enjoying doing this so far. It's only the first couple of songs. Let's move on. Next is the song A Rumour of Skin. This carries the story along at a nice pace, being a bit more stripped down from the previous two songs, as we're introduced to a new character named Alan. Alan is a look-alike of the human and essentially represents his much darker side. It's the first of many meetings between the two, and whilst Alan is a shady character, he does instruct the human into fighting the album's titular House of Golden Bones before an event known as the Conflagration happens. Whilst this track is not as heavy as the previous two, it does stand out for its refrain, which appears on a future song titled Do Me a Favour, but we'll cover that in Part 2, because that song is on Part 2. Also, I just really like the song's title. It sounds like something that you would actually get from a book. And it's a really good building block, like introducing this new character in Alan early, who is a very, very good parallel to the human so far. It's a really nice sort of dichotomy, if I may use a really large word, which I don't use enough. I like the word dichotomy. We then get into Song 4 and one of the album's slower tracks in The Travelers Part 1. The song's tone fits the message well, and it's a good point to break from the heavy tracks before it. The Travelers Part 1 details the human going through the aftermath of a heartbreak, and the song is his message of moving on from that. Pardon me twice. He laments over the fact that, by trying to completely let go of his relationship, he'll be reborn in a way, hopefully becoming a better person for it. It's a good building block to his anti-hero character, and it's fair to assume that this is something that takes place before he meets with Ellen in the new world. In fact, whilst each song does tell the story, it does it in a rather unique way, and as I mentioned earlier, it's not in exact order. The album's concept almost feels in medias res at times, sort of like Pulp Fiction. It feels like a Tarantino movie. The acoustic styling really suits the track quite well, and it doesn't get too soppy, and it really helps carry the story. And Corey conveys the human's feelings about love and about his heartbreak really, really well. Like I said, not too preachy about it, just does it in the right amount. Next is possibly one of my favourite songs from the album, titled Tired. It does seem to kind of take place in the human's past in a way, much like the story of his breakup for The Travelers Part 1. Tired details another traumatic memory, this one being that of his parents. When I say it sort of takes place in the past, it seems like there's references to it, as his father was an alcoholic, and tired is essentially the human's way of saying that he's tired of trying to be a good person, of trying to find God, and he's tired of his own internal struggle. He finds it harder to be kind than bad, so he decides to be bad and he picks up smoking and drinking, with the lyrics "I'm just too young to care," further hinting at this song taking place in a previous point in his life. The track is really well balanced with its story as well, and the song's tone is really well paced. It's enjoyable to listen to, even though it feels harsh at times. In terms of story, it's definitely one of the best songs, and it's just one of the best songs in general. It's a really, really good balanced track, and it just sounds awesome. Next up is possibly the album's heaviest track, titled RU486. The title itself is possibly a hint at the main evil faction of the album's story, their name being the Numbers, who we get more on in part 2. The Numbers are a zombie-like group who've been brainwashed into trying to kill the human, and the chant of the creepy radio voice at the start is possibly an outsider's way of turning the human into another number, that number being 486. And the RU in the title obviously are spelled as letters R and U, but is asking like they're the words R-A-R-E and U-Y-R-U. This is actually a really crucial part of the album's concept, as the chant heard by the radio voice at the start is possibly a way to try and get into the human's head. In fact, the radio voice seems to want to drill in the point of making the human another number, even insulting him, bringing up his haunting past and repeating the chant even further, possibly trying to push him even more over the edge. And as I mentioned, it's a really heavy track, like, huge drumming, lots of screaming. Well, enough screaming to keep a balanced performance from Corey Taylor's vocals. And just a well-told story, and another really good building block. Next up is what may be my absolute favourite song in the album, titled My Name is Alan. This is possibly the first song to tell the story from Alan's point of view in a way, and it does contain a reference to the previous track RU486, with the radio voice revealing itself to be Alan and establishing him more as the villain. It continues the album's main theme of an internal war, with Alan, sorry I had something on the arm there, being some form of god, or thinking he is, and taking over the human very slowly, digging deeper and deeper into his mind and getting into his head, hoping to overtake him completely. In fact, with Alan being the human's dark side emerging at the right time of the human's deepest moments of despair and heartbreak, it's just the icing on the cake, and in the hopes to fully consume the human's mind. He waits for his chance to strike there as well. Because the human has lamented over his past, his relationship that didn't work, his parents fighting, his father's drinking, his own drinking and smoking, and Alan waited for this time perfectly to try and get inside. And it's just a really, the song title is really appropriate, tonally appropriate as well, with the theme of identity and struggle being showcased very well, coupled with great riffs and even some creepy laughter from a more evil-sounding Corey Taylor, who really gets into the bad guy role quite well. This is definitely my favourite track on the album. It tells the story fantastically. It's the best in terms of story, and the song that goes with it and tells it does it beautifully. I mean, it's a relatively heavy song, but it's a beautifully heavy song, if that makes sense. So, let's move on. Next is another softer song in Taciturn. Once again, it's another break from the intensity of the previous track, and it seems to be similar to The Traveller's Part 1. It feels more like some form of love song. Corey Taylor himself said that Taciturn is about opening yourself up more to people, but the song does show its story side, with the human possibly preaching to find some form of light in his ever-despairing life. I mean, with Alan taking him over and the possibility of the Numbers growing stronger, you really can't blame him. But Taciturn is more than that, as it feels like it takes place after the human's breakup, with him pleading his partner not to leave him. The song is ultimately a cry for help, as it comes at a point where the human truly needs it. It's one of the more ambiguous songs in terms of story, but it is still well established, and the beautiful guitar solo from Jim Root definitely gives it a pass. It is kind of a weaker song in my opinion, not because it's softer, but because, once again, it's a bit all over the place, but it does work, and it's still a good song. And tells the story well too. Keeps things going. We then reach the next song, The Influence of a Drowsy God. Well, not the, I just added that in for no reason. Of all of them, though, this song is one of the more difficult to interpret, as I did at least try to find some kind of explanation or interpretation of the other songs. This one was a bit more difficult to fully understand, which is a shame because I really like this song. But it does seem to build more upon the story that was set in My Name is Alan, and it's told from the human's perspective of sorts. It depicts Alan's taking the human over and being unleashed on the world as a god in some way. The lyrics detail Alan being released on a world that's already falling apart, and the human regrets not being able to stop anything from happening. Once again, maybe reaching out to some form of deity along the way. I wish that I could say more from what I found out, but Influence of the Drowsy God is a much more balanced song and the elements good for the story, but I can't find a lot about how it ties into the actual story. I mean, besides it maybe being a sequel to My Name is Alan, I really couldn't find much about it, which as mentioned is a shame because, as I also mentioned, I really do like the song. But it's definitely still worth a listen, Even if you don't care about the story that much, at least it might be worth your time. However, that ambiguity of story and lack of information does not carry on into the next song, The Travelers Part 2. And that's a good thing, really. The Travelers Part 2 is one of the album's final two tracks, and in contrast to the first part, this one doesn't have any acoustic parts, and it's one of the more balanced tracks like Tired and Influence of a Drowsy God. It's also the album's shortest song technically, which is amazing considering how good it is for storytelling, as the human and Ellen finally reach the conflagration at what might be a church. The last part is more up in the air, but the shortness of the song tells the story well, even as we hear the human grow tired by this point. Yeah. In fact, The Travelers Part 2 and the album's final track, Last of the Real, are two sides of the same coin. The Travelers Part 2 is told through the human's eyes. By this point in the story, he's tired, broken, and hurt. But when we get to the album's final track, in Last of the Real, it's almost the polar opposite to the song that came before it. The song is a bit heavier, but it's about the same length as The Travelers Part 2. In fact, both songs are meant to be listened to back to back, so yeah, it's kind of like a Gone Sovereign Absolute Zero thing. Also, it's getting really dark. I'm going to turn on the light. There we go. Anyway, as I said about The Travelers Part 2, that's the good side of the coin, detailing the human's exhaustion and declining hope by this point. Last of the Real is told from Alan's perspective again, and he seems genuinely happy to have been able to have made it to the conflagration with the human, and possibly telling you over fully. Last of the Real is where Alan truly manifests as the human's darker side and goes from just kind of a villain to a more proper one, demanding that the human give in to him and, to quote the song itself, give him what he wants, even just straight up taunting him near the end. This sets both him and the human up nicely for House of Gold and Bones Part 2 and continues the story well into the second album. And so that does it for Part 1 of House of Gold and Bones. I know it's a bit shorter than my backtracking stuff, but this is a series I won't be going over with as much as I will with backtracking. I do want to take this kind of seriously, but not too much. Pardon me. It's not going to happen as frequently in backtracking. I won't be written into as much because I want to keep it relatively short. But it depends on what I might talk about, because I know for a fact that House of Gold and Bones Part 2 has a lot more ground and story to cover than Part 1 does. I'm sorry that I didn't go too into detail with things, and if there's anything that I missed, feel free to let me know. Regardless, I do hope that you enjoyed this part, and I really enjoyed making it for you. I didn't really think I would, but then I just bucked up and thought, screw it, let's give it a shot. And I'm starting to think it's done out pretty well, maybe, you know. But yeah, I hope you liked it, and I'll see you all next time. Take care, and thank you for listening. You're awesome.